Hello everybody, my name is Dratnos and welcome to This Week in Mythic Plus. This week's affixes are Tyrannical, Raging, Volcanic, and of course, Tormented. This is one of the best Tyrannical weeks. I mean, this is probably the best Tyrannical week on the calendar for most groups. The other candidate being the Bursting Volcanic Tyrannical week, but I think especially for less coordinated groups, this is going to be a way better experience than that bursting week, and of course that's 6 weeks away. So this week for both really high-end key pushers, I think you're going to see a lot of the highest tyrannical keys done this week. And just if you're looking to get some tyrannical score for whatever reason, for your upgrades and stuff. In fact, for a lot of players, I think this will be a week where you can probably do keys at or even above the level you were doing last week, which was probably the best fortified week. So all around, yeah, great week to go and do some keys. We're kind of followed by a couple of yikes ones here, right? We got Inspiring, Grievous, Fortified, then we got a Necrotic week, then we got a Bolstering week. So get your keys done now, and then take a nice vacation for the next couple of weeks. Is probably a pretty good strategy if you're looking to collect some score. If you're looking to set some high levels on your profile. And then kind of chill for the next couple weeks. This is definitely going to be a week to do that. So, what are the affixes doing this week? Really not much of anything. Tyrannical, the kind of the operative affix this week is just Tyrannical. Raging, pretty benign when paired with Tyrannical rather than Fortified. There are a couple of dungeons where you are going to want to watch out for Raging. For instance, the other side, this is a dungeon where there's actually quite a bit of raging threat, particularly if you don't have a soothe effect for it, which is Hunters, Druids, and Rogues this expansion that can do that. Mobs like Risen Warlords, naturally they already have their own enrage that makes them immune to death as well. If this overlaps with raging and they're low health and also not dying, then that can be very deadly for your tank. So kite those if you don't have a soothe them if you do have a soothe. The other thing to watch out for is mobs like Enraged Spirits. Depending on how you're playing this dungeon, you may end up finding some other mobs as well that sort of fit this bill, but it's really the Enraged Spirits that's like unavoidable group-wide damage. If these mobs push below 30% health and cast a full rage channel, that's going to be very bad for you. That's going to be extremely deadly. So a couple different ways to attack this. Like for this Enraged Spirit, you could save the urn for, depending on what key level you're doing, it may be getting 2 rage casts. Maybe you save the urn for the second rage cast that is below 30% health. Depending on the key level, you may be able to just kill these after their first rage cast before they get to a second, which is also a pretty good tactic for handling that. Otherwise, there's really not too many places that jump to mind as particularly deadly raging effects. One thing to watch out for is going to be the Shards of Halkias. Those definitely need to be carefully managed below 30% health. Sort of similar way to the Spirits in the other side, where if they get that rage cast off, or if they get that full thrash channel off from 30%, and they're enraged the whole time, that's kind of nasty. Of course, if you have a soothe effect, neither of these things are as big of a deal, but, you don't always enter these dungeons with a rogue, druid, or hunter. Definitely these two dungeons, it is a good one to, if you're on the fence about it, right? If you're doing a weekly key, that could be something that helps you figure out what character to play or invite or whatever, if you feel like you might need it for those dungeons. In halls in particular, with Tyrannical active, you're definitely going to want to Bloodlust Echelon. Echelon, kind of one of the few bosses actually where Volcanic can get you as well when you're stunned. So do watch out for that, particularly if you ever get stunned while a bunch of imps are still alive, then you're going to have a bunch of Volcanic spawning. Because the way Volcanic works is that it spawns based on the number of active enemies, as long as there's at least one person who is at range of those enemies. So if you can get in melee range or everything, Volcanics actually can't spawn under you. But if there are mobs that are ranged from you, they will be trying to spawn volcanoes under you, so do watch out for that. All right, what do we got next? Mists, really just about the bosses this week. Make sure that you are moving in such a way that you're not going to get feared into puddles on this boss. So usually you want to do this by kind of looping around the room such that you're getting feared, because you get feared away from the boss, right? You want to make sure you don't have blue puddles behind you during that. You also kind of want to make sure you're not getting feared into a wall this week, because you can get volcanicked during that. If you have Tremor Totem, that's really good for this as well. You will, on Tyrannical weeks, generally get 1 or 2 of those fear casts per phase, unless the key level is quite low, so do watch out for that. Plaguefall, very tough Tyrannical dungeon. Bring a single target oriented build generally, because usually the trash on a Tyrannical week not going to cause as much of a challenge. Obviously this section is kind of hard to execute always, but really the bosses are going to be the key threat here. Remember that you can always pull this guy before Dr. Ickes, and I think that's actually just a all-around great idea to do. And probably not a dungeon where you're going to want to fight Tormented with the last boss. It's actually, a lot of these other dungeons, it's pretty easy to do, even on Tyrannical Week, and it's kind of even more necessary to save that time on Tyrannical Week, but Plaguefall, I would be pretty hesitant to attempt that unless you really are confident in your group. All right, Sanguine Depths, a lot of tough bosses in here, also a lot of trash that deals either group-wide or focused at random players damage, right? You got these scribes that are throwing books at everybody, those sorts of effects, and if those are free casting and raging, that's going to be bad news for you. So either soothe them or deal damage in a staggered fashion or use AoE crowd control as they get below 30% health to prevent them from just assassinating members of your group. All right, Spires. So Spires, not a bad dungeon for this week. I mean, this week is a pretty good week to be venturing into most dungeons. Spires, what you're going to want to maybe do is, like particularly the path that I have here, you can get all these routes from Raider.io every week. There's a link in the description to where you can go and find those. And one thing you might need to do in this dungeon, depending on the key level, is actually combine some of these pulls. So in particular, like these two pulls can be combined and like line of sighted down here. These two pulls can be combined. It's scary for your tank, but particularly, depending on how you can do this, somebody can run in and start the pull with an immunity, or you can break these things out of stealth so they don't stun your tank and just get them behind right at the start of the pull. Doing stuff like that can help you generate timer in this dungeon. This is also one of the dungeons with the most, I would say, the closest to a mandatory soothe effect, in that like these angels are really nasty if they are raging and hitting your whole group. It's not impossible, but it's really tough to deal with that, so definitely a consideration. Make sure you are confident you're going to be able to handle this, either with a soothe or especially without it. Necrotic Wake, a dungeon where it's really all about the bosses. I think a boss that catches people off guards a lot is Stitchflesh. This is a boss that, particularly on Tyrannical weeks, if people are used to just coming in here on fortified weeks and blasting through, you get in this situation where you just kind of do a little bit of damage, you're not really using a bunch of stuff on it, and then you get to this point where you have like 3 creations out and your tank is just getting obliterated, and the boss is still at 40% health, and you're just like, what's happened here? So using stuff like Spires on Stitchflesh is a really good idea to help make this fight go down as quickly as possible. Just really make sure you don't wipe after doing that, because then you lose your spear and it's probably all over. And then finally, Theater of Pain. Okay, so Theater of Pain last week was bugged such that these mobs were not reliably activating. Some of the time they would activate like 10 seconds later than they should have, and other times they were just not activating at all. And these mobs are worth a lot of count, right? You can see 20 of the 271 count that you get in the dungeon from each of these mini-bosses. Hopefully this is a fixed bug. Hopefully this is something that they figured out. Once the servers go down this week, they push a fix for this issue. If that doesn't happen, my advice is going to be to go to this wing first. Just check. You can at least check these 2 spawns, see if the duelists spawn, right? And then that can inform how much count you'll need from the rest of the dungeon. If you need more count from the rest of the dungeon, the side pulls, this double bone magus pull, these double bone magus pulls generally can either be pulled in at the start of a pull if you've got a lot of kicks, or towards the end of these pulls. So that's a good source of some extra count if you need it. You can pull gas bags, but usually I would recommend against that. So I would say in general, if you need extra count, that is where I would go. You can get 24 count from doing these 6 bone magi, and that makes up for 1 mini boss. If somehow 2 mini bosses don't activate, you're gonna have to go farther afield to find the count. You can see these things are worth a lot of count. So hopefully that's fixed, but if it's not, then that's what you got to do. Anyways, hope you enjoyed this video. Hope it helped. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one. Bye.